This is the POAM update for the metabolic experiment that I'm doing. Actually, this is the first POAM update for the metabolic experiment that I'm doing. And I'm my own guinea pig for this experiment. The first step that we're at right now is for me to get updated lab work. That's job one. And when I originally created that step for the POAM, I was specifically talking about the blood work, not necessarily anything else, but I've added some components to that initial lab work step. Most importantly, or at least the first thing that's outside of blood work, is the CAC test, or coronary artery calcium test. Now, what that test is going to do is it's going to look at my heart and the arteries around it and determine how much calcified plaque is in those arteries. Now, calcified plaque, it's already calcified, it's already hardened, and the chances of it breaking away and dislodging and creating a problem in the channel is very limited. Could happen, but it's limited. But the benefit of having a test like this is that as you have multiples of these tests and that score changes, it's going to give you an indication of what could be happening with your soft plaques based on what's happening with the actual rate of calcification. Now, with the blood work proper, originally I was just going to get an enhanced metabolic panel and the insulin, fasting insulin and fasting glucose tests. I need those two tests so I can calculate my HOMA-IR score. I want to know what my insulin resistance is. And so those were two additional tests I was going to get. But I've added in an NMR test as well. So the NMR is a nuclear magnetic resonance test. And unlike a regular lipid panel where you get totals without any indication of what is underlying those totals, the NMR is going to give you a little bit more data about each of those components in your lipid profile. For example, your LDL is not just one type of LDL. There are multiple types of LDL, and they're based on particle size. The numbers I've seen most frequently referenced are 80% and 20% for the ratio of the larger, more buoyant LDL particles and 20% for the smaller, more dense LDL particles. And we don't care about the larger LDL particles. They're large, they're going to float around, they're not going to get under the endothelial cells to become lodged and create plaques. Those smaller cells though, you got to watch out for those. So without knowing that number though, you don't know where you stand with any of that. And this is going to give us an indication of what's actually happening with those LDL particle sizes. It'll also do other things. VLDL is going to be included and HDL, and it'll also give you a really good workup of those. Plus, even though I'm getting the insulin and glucose numbers for my the fasting states so I can calculate insulin resistance, I'm also going to get an IR score from the NMR. Theirs is calculated a little bit differently, but it'll be good to see to kind of compare the results of both. And also just having that extra data there, it could be important down the road. I have a couple of more tests that I'm going to get. HbA1c, the hemoglobin A1c test, and also the ApoA1 and ApoB tests. And I'm also going to get a new test, the LPA test. So the LPA test, and if you have this gene, you're going to have a higher propensity to have metabolic issues, heart attack, stroke, high blood pressure, and other things associated with metabolic complications. What this gene does to LDL is supercharges it. It makes it more robust. You can increase the positive effects of a thing, but you can also increase the negative effects of a thing. And here it's going to increase the negative effects significantly, where it's numerically meaningful in the impact that this gene can have on your metabolic health. I'm going to do these tests periodically. Each test will probably have its own periodicity, but the LPA test, that's one where you only have to do that once in your life. And because your genetic makeup doesn't change drastically over your lifetime. So there's no need for me to go back and get this test over and over again. So I think this is something that will probably be good for people to have sooner rather than later. If I'd known about this, if it was out years ago, I would have had all the kids do it as well. It would have gave me some insight into what I was working with from a genetic perspective with my kids. That would help me make some choices about how we would manage maybe their activities, what they were eating, and all of those things. Now, you never want your kids to eat bad or be sedentary, but if you know there's an underlying complication, you're probably going to be more stringent on what you're going to recommend, allow, and kind of, design your framework for parenting around. But those are the tests. And again, just to run through them real quick, I'm going to get a fasting insulin test, a fasting glucose test, a HbA1c test, ApoA, ApoB tests, a lipoprotein A test, and an NMR, a nuclear magnetic resonance test. And that's all of the blood work. And then in addition, I'm also going to have a coronary artery calcium score done. And, what this is going to do is give me a solid baseline and jump off point for future tests that I do. And it will help me make decisions about managing how I do this experiment to see what's working, what's not working. And, over time, as I go through, I can see if the numbers are rising or lowering, depending on what the result is that I'm seeking for any particular biomarker. I can make adjustments based on that and be very confident that at least I went by a certain point in time and I know what the complexion of my health was at that time. So everything after it is following this known state. And to put some of this in context, one of the things I've done is I've somewhat relaxed some of the other things and protocols that I was doing in regards to my diet and lifestyle. Mostly I've introduced a little more sugar and carbohydrate, not a whole lot, but something closer to normal what I would do on vacation or in a relaxed state when I'm not strictly adhering to something to knock these numbers down. And the reason why that's important is I want these beginning numbers to be, or the baseline to be the worst it's going to be based on how I would actually live in real life. I mean, I'm going to go on vacations. There are going to be times where I'm not going to stick to it. Sometimes I need a break. And I think it's good for your body to have those fluctuations where you make those kinds of changes so that it can adapt and respond. Typically, you get a better response when you step away and come back to something like this. But by doing that, I'm going to know what my normal is. And so that way, when I get back on the program, I have a better chance of being successful. So that's the first update for the POAM. And as always, for those of you who are on the same or a similar journey, good luck with your efforts as well. And for everyone else, thanks for watching.